Okay, I'll get started as we still have lots more people coming in. So hi, everybody. Welcome to this panel. It's being presented to you by the Student Alumni Council and the NYU Alumni Association. My name is Mina. I'm the president of the Student Alumni Council, and I'll be graduating in a few weeks from CAS with a degree in neuroscience. So thank you all for being here today. Just to note, this session is being recorded. Special thanks to all of our panelists and our moderator for being here this evening as well. So we'll be hearing from 4 NYU alumni who graduated in either 2007 or 2008, which we know was this time of economic recession in the US. So I think it'll be really great to hear their perspectives on how to sort of navigate the job market during these times. So with us, we have Jill Smith, who graduated from CAS in 2008. I guess I can. And then we have Chris Lotz, who graduated from CAS in 2008, Erica Olson from Stern in 2007, and Ryan Scoville from Steinhardt in 2008. And our moderator this evening is also an NYU alumni, Alexa Loken, and she owns her own career coaching firm. So she'll be sharing some helpful tips and advice as well, but I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself in a few minutes. I just wanted to give you a quick overall schedule for today. So after these opening remarks, we'll have Alexa, our moderator, come in and share a bit more about herself. Then we'll go into asking a set of questions to the panelists where we'll hear about them. And then after that, we'll have a quick Q&A session and then concluding tips from Alexa about how to kind of increase our likelihood of employment in this time. And we're going to try to answer as many of your questions as possible, time permitting. So if you see at the bottom of your screen, there should be a question and answer feature. And please feel free to, throughout the session, just drop any questions that you have there, and then we'll try to answer those during that question and answer session. So without further ado, I think we can get started. I'll stop sharing my screen, and Alexa, you can kind of start telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hello, everyone out there from all over the country/world. I grew up on the West Coast. I actually went to undergrad at American University in DC, and then I went to NYU for my master's program. I did media, culture, and communication through Steinhardt. After that, I moved to Hawaii for a year, as you do. And then I got island fever and moved to Austin, Texas in 2012. And then 2 years ago, we were lucky enough to start spending the summers up in Colorado. So I'm currently just north of Denver because it's really hot in Texas in the summer. So I would say just a little bit about myself. The constant thread of my career has been just my love of helping others, and my major motivation is having a purpose and trying to make a difference. So that's what started kind of the whole entrepreneurial spirit. I started Loken Careers, the career coaching business that I run now, about 6 years ago. And I thought I would never be in a job for more than 2 or 3 years, but I've actually not been bored because it's a constant work in progress. Everything's changing. I changed my materials or change my team. I see hundreds of different types of clients. I started a podcast, and I still really love it just because I get to help with, such different types of people and careers and industries and help them find the jobs that they like. So I started my career after grad school in the environmental nonprofit world. I worked in tech for a little bit. I worked at Indeed.com as a career coach for software engineers, and I got to help start their Ireland office. And then, I've kind of been doing little side projects here and there for marketing consulting, and as well as starting teaching in the business schools at CU Boulder and then at a university in Austin a couple years ago as well. So personal note, I have 2 cats and 2 dogs and a almost 5-month-old baby girl. And that is entirely enough about me. So I would love to spend the next 45 minutes asking the lovely panelists that we have here this evening, basically, what they have learned, and give them some time to share their knowledge and wisdom with everybody that's on the call. So first off, I would love for you all to go through and please tell us a little bit about yourself, which school you were in, your year, what you currently do. If you could give also one word to describe how you felt when you were graduating, and then separately, one word to describe your overall career journey up until now, that would be wonderful. And if you want to expand and extrapolate on the word, go crazy.
I can start. Should I start?
Go for it.
Zoom, so awkward. Hi, everyone. I am Erica Olson. I graduated from Stern in 07. So I think everyone else on this panel graduated in 08. So there are probably some nuances. When I graduated, I went to work in fashion for 4 years. As I'm sure we'll get into, it was not necessarily my dream career, nor what I thought it would be. So after about 4 years, I went back to school. I went to Harvard and got my MBA. And since then, I've been working in brand consulting. So both for a company, and then about 3 years ago, I started my own company. Based here in New York City. I'm very close to NYU, but we're a team of 8, and that's what I do now. Do you want me to go the words too? The full gamut?
Go for it. Go crazy.
I think when I graduated, it wasn't like right in it, right? Like there were like rumblings of it, but especially coming from Stern, a lot of the kids had already secured their jobs. I was not that person because I wanted to do something atypical for Stern. Investment banking wasn't my thing. So I'd say I was optimistic. Like you're excited to, finally be out of school, even though you quickly realize school is more fun and more safe than it feels like when you're in it. So I think I was pretty optimistic when I graduated, but my word for my journey up till now is iterative. I think things quickly became quite uncertain and a little bit tumultuous in all industries very soon after I graduated. And I think from there, I just kept kind of trying to solve for maybe something that I wasn't happy with, or taking what I could get, or figuring out what was even possible, meaning grad school or whatever. So it was just always constant iteration. It never felt like I was necessarily on a path. And I think that's what I still feel probably. So yeah, that's mine.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. So my name is Ryan Scoville. I graduated from NYU Steinhardt in 2008 with a degree in vocal performance musical theater. And so I was in the city after I graduated in 2008 pursuing an acting career, which was hard. And also worked in food service, obviously to kind of support that lifestyle. And then found myself kind of moving into teaching. So I've been teaching in various capacities for a couple of years. I got my master's in theater education from CCNY up in Harlem. And then I moved out to Ohio, where I currently am, to get my master's of fine arts in acting, which I wrap up on Saturday. I technically graduate virtually, probably like all of you, thank you. And then I just found out actually that I was lucky enough to get a position teaching musical theater at North Dakota State University in Fargo, North Dakota. So I'll be moving there over the summer. I'm interested to see what moving looks like during all of this, and start a new journey. My word for myself, similar to Erica, I was very optimistic. We theater folk don't like to think about the real world very much. So I'd say my word was naive. I didn't really know what the situation was and how it would affect me. I didn't have that money training that people, who attend Stern do. So I was like, this is going to be fun. I'm going to make it work. And it didn't necessarily work out that way. My word for my journey overall, I guess would be circular. I thought that I was making a move away from acting and away from theater by moving into teaching. And then now that I've come back, I did my MFA in acting. I've kind of returned to the theater in a way, which I didn't expect, and kind of found a way to do both things that I love, teaching and performing. So yeah, it's been a circular journey for me.
Thank you. Good words. All right, Jill or Chris, who's going next?
I don't think rock, paper, scissors works super well over Zoom, but I work in summer camping, so I had to try the game. Jill, I graduated CAS in 2008, and I studied broadcast journalism and Jewish history, two kind of very different things. I'm originally from Florida, and when I graduated, I couldn't find a job. So I would say that my word when I graduated was concerned, but also determined. I had worked at a summer camp as a counselor and educator for several years, and I was able to get a summer job as a camp counselor where I grew up. I'm from South Florida, but my camp was in Georgia. And while I was at camp, I continued to interview I was really determined to get a broadcasting job. And so I remember I pulled off the side of the road one day on an hour off from camp near a farm just to get cell phone service so that I could have a call with CNN. I didn't get that job, but it was a fun story. And when I finished that summer job, I went home to my parents for a couple weeks and was really determined to get a job in broadcasting in New York City. Found a part-time job working with teens at a synagogue in Westchester while I lived in Jackson Heights, Queens, and tried to make ends meet until I got a job working at New York One News, a 24/7 TV station. And I did that for 7 years, working in TV production and supervising. It was not fulfilling my passions anymore, although it was a dream job for 7 years. And then I started working at a nonprofit that I'm now at called Foundation for Jewish Camp, where I am the senior program manager focusing on mental health programs and leadership and professional development for camp counselors and camp directors. And I get to do fun things like, how do you do rock, paper, scissors on Zoom with 100 people? Ask me next week after I run a conference for 400 camp counselors on Zoom. So I would say that my career path, in a couple words, would be researched, following passions. I did a lot of coffee dates at first with people about broadcast news. And then I did a lot of coffee dates with people about going into the Jewish nonprofit sector. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much. All right, Chris, last but
All
not
right.
least.
No, all good. So my name is Chris Lotz. I graduated CAS in 2008. I studied international relations with a focus on the Middle East. So it was very topical after 2001 and everything else. I was loving what I was doing in school, and it felt very focused and everything was great. 2007, October 2007, I looked back to my notes this morning and my emails and stuff, so just kind of refresh this time, because it almost seems surreal at this point. 2007, October, got engaged to my girlfriend at NYU. That was great. We were all feeling really awesome about things. March 2008, Bear Stearns collapse. Cool. Okay, well, the economy's starting to go down. I started to see a lot of my friends in the international relations and politics world started to have their NGO jobs and like interviews start to disappear. Okay, well, I'm in a specialized skill set. I probably, so on, tell yourself a lot of stories. And then graduated in May, living at home at my parents' house with my fiance, no jobs on the horizon. All the NGO stuff dried up. Government was probably my only option at that point, but it was everyone else's option who was in the policy world. So it was quite a mess. I'd say the word for my time when I graduated was adrift. It was a rough time. I actually remember. Asked my wife if I could tell this story this morning. We were sitting, it was in August, and we were sitting in my parents' house and looking at each other. Neither of us had jobs. We were planning on getting married next year and looking at each other and like, should we be getting married right now? Like, what are we doing? This is a mess. Needless to say, we did, but okay. So sometime during that summer, I started to talk to a company you might all know named AIG. About a job. And at that time, AIG was not doing great, but nobody knew about that. But they had a lot of growth in the international sector. And I really wanted, my goal after college was to go work in the Middle East. they had a job opening in Dubai. I started to interview for it. And we can talk about how I found that and everything else. But then September 18th, 2008, AIG collapsed. And I have an email from that day asking whether my interviews were still on. But I actually did eventually get a job at AIG, funny enough, because they really wanted me, which I was really pleased about, for $10 an hour part-time trainee in the personal wealth division. So I took it, and a bunch of things later, I ended up in Singapore in October 2009, launching their high net worth business in Asia, which was a rocket ship. So I'd say the word for my career, since then to now, now I have a startup in San Francisco called Good Cover. We do personal insurance, renters insurance on a cooperative basis. My word up to now would be discovery. I think when I was in college, I knew what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to do quickly evaporated. And I discovered some other things about myself through simply, I failed pretty hard in a bunch of different things that had me really have to learn some stuff quickly. So learned a lot about myself and what I really cared about, which maybe be crisis related, was financial peace of mind for people. So that's kind of informed all my career decisions up to then, including quitting my job while I still had a 6-month-old to start my own company. So I now have 2 kids, one another on the way, small startup, small team. We launched our first product in February. So I am going through the process again, new learnings, a lot of humility, a lot of things I thought I knew I don't know. So it's a process.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for the overview and intro of yourself. I would say my word really quickly would be overwhelmed when I graduated. And my word to describe my career journey would be, I was going to go with either zigzag or amorphous, and I couldn't choose. So the joy of being the moderator is I can say both and no one can yell at me. So I would love to now hear from each of you, or whoever wants to answer this question, as what are some of your failures during the job search process? You just mentioned actually a failure, which was great. And I, in the nicest way possible, think that failing is one of the best things you can do, like fail hard, fail fast, and then move along. And so what did you do or not do during your job search process, and how would you improve? What do you recommend for everyone who's graduating right now? I really quickly would just say my best advice is informational interviews, networking, coffee dates, chatting, asking questions as much as you can, and being open to all possibilities. So that's my 2 seconds, and I would love to hear what all of you have to say as well.
Just the one core thing I knew I failed hard at was I definitely assumed that applications were the way you got jobs, and that was the safe path to fill out as many applications, especially all these organizations that did things I liked and everything else. I eventually only got a job because I started talking to people I knew, and seemed to have nothing to do with what I wanted to do, but really kind of started asking for help. And that changed everything. So, I had to fail to learn that, but it's definitely the number one thing I would suggest is don't, confuse activity for progress. It's probably better to go and start talking to people about what you want to do, find who you want to work with rather than what you want to do. And it's about those relationships.
Chris, I think when you say that it's about relationships, 120%. And I think for me, there was also a sense of not feeling ashamed for taking help. I got my 7-year career in broadcast journalism because my stepmom asked if she could share her resume with somebody on the Weston, Florida Volunteer Arts Council, because her son-in-law's cousin worked at New York One. Well, it turned out that person was the vice president of the news division of Time Warner Cable, that at the time owned New York One. And that's how even though I'd applied for a job there several times over the internet, that's the only reason that my resume made it through. And during the interview, a little failure, the person interviewing me asked, how did I know this high up person, Steve Paulus? And I said, oh, a family friend. I didn't even know the person's name. Like, I never heard, I thought that I'd researched their website, and I didn't know that that was the person who'd gotten my, so I kind of lied my way just a little bit. Everything else in the interview was totally truthful. But when I decided to go a different route in my career and start working in the Jewish nonprofit world, the job that I applied for was going to be a pay cut. Not a major one, but I think it also, they ended up hiring me at a higher position than the one that I initially applied for that didn't exist before. So I think a learning for me was apply to be able to get to the interview and trying to just connect with them, and that sometimes the things that are listed in the requirements isn't always exactly a requirement.
Similar to Jill, for me, I'm sure we all have these stories of networking that like was super successful that we didn't expect. I went on a random OkCupid date with a costume designer, and it didn't work out, which is totally fine. But we were friendly, and he knew that I was an actor, and so he was working on a show that just happened to be needing extra male actors. And so I went in and I auditioned and I booked it, and it was my first like big off-Broadway show, which all happened because of like a terrible drink date. So I think that's one thing that I specifically as an actor did well was network. One of the things, my biggest failure was not knowing how to brand myself and not really knowing how to put myself out in the market. I think now, especially in 2020, that's a little easier for people to do than it was for us back in 2008. But like, I didn't know anything about running a website. I felt intrusive for doing mailings to people and like sending my resume out and for asking for meetings. I just apologized a lot. And so I think what I learned as I have grown up is like, if you want something, you've got to go get it. And you've got to know what your brand is. You have to know how to market yourself. You have to know how to put yourself out in the world and ask to be seen. So that is something that I definitely spent a lot of years working on.
I think that's great advice. And I think that people want to be helpful, especially right now. I mean, COVID is, for so many reasons, really horrible and emotionally draining. And if you can give someone a reason that they can be useful and helpful for you, like you don't need to apologize. Like they will be excited to help. Or worst case, they say no, and then you're still where you were anyway. So it's fine.
I have one thing to add. I won't add the network thing because that's true for me too. But what I wish I did, and I definitely did not do, but when I realized like my dream job wasn't gonna happen, right? Like my dream job, my dream salary, where I wanted to be, I wish I would have spent more time doing coffee dates or informational interviews or even like shadowing people to learn what the day-to-day was like at somewhere and maybe what I would learn in that job. So I was so focused on like category and industry that when that wasn't possible, I kind of lost track, and it ended up that I worked in fashion at the time for 4 years. And now I work in branding, and I always kind of wanted to work like more in marketing and branding, but working in fashion, even though I was in sales and merchandising, I learned the power of brand, and I learned how to communicate a brand in store and in advertising. And that wasn't something that I consciously thought about, but looking back, I think I got kind of lucky in that sense, but it did make me think as I was sort of reflecting for this panel, it would have been good if I stopped and said, okay, maybe I can't work in marketing right now. Like marketing budgets are the first to go, right? Those were already gone by the time I graduated in 2007. So maybe I can't work exactly in marketing right now, but what industries or what roles am I going to learn something that's marketing adjacent that I can then leverage after that? And I don't think that's necessarily apparent. So that's why I say, I think sometimes those are good questions for like coffee dates or shadowing or informational interviews. And it feels like a good interim step that served me well on accident, but that might be helpful.
That was such a lovely segue to my next question. So number 3 is it worth it to take a job in a field that doesn't necessarily translate to your ideal career right now, or delay the idea of a dream job during this time? How flexible should everyone be in this current situation?
I can start with that one. Yes, take it. Take the job, I say. If it's going to pay, take it. I have worked so many random jobs that I never expected to work. I worked in a Korean restaurant, and I'm not Korean, clearly. I have worked in bakeries. I've been a cater waiter, done all kinds of like weird stuff. And it's all helped me in a way, kind of like push me in a certain direction. But I specifically as an actor was somebody who like, I was like, I love to perform, but I don't direct, I don't choreograph, I don't know how to do those things. And I would have people come to me and say, hey, we need somebody to like do this choreography in like one little number. Can you do it? I was like, well, I don't choreograph. But then finally I said yes, and I did it and realized I could do it. And saying yes to certain small things that I didn't think were going to be helpful led me towards education. And moving into education, though it seemed like a leap away from performing, led me back to performing in the end. So you never know where the path is going to lead. I never thought that I would be going back to school for my MFA in performance and have that come back into my life again. So I absolutely say yes, take any job that you can that seems maybe somewhat closely related. And you can always find ways of applying the skills.
Does anyone
Heavily
else?
seconded.
Oh, go ahead.
I cannot say enough to say yes. Take, I think to a degree, getting any kind of job that allowed me to move out of my parents' house in the first instance was like a life-changing event in the first place. And then so yeah, if it pays, go for it. I do think there is a danger, and I suffered from this. I got a job. It was a traumatic experience because I went from wanting to save the world to working at a now failed insurance company, and it was the longest year of my life between November, like roughly October 2008 to October 2009, and I think about that time now and realize I should have been learning a lot more and paying a lot more attention to what I did have, even though I didn't think it was what I wanted. And the fact that it paid the bills and got us, through. My wife got a job during that time too, and we made it out. Was just like that was more important than any sort of other pride or that I had about what I thought I was supposed to be good at and all the rest of it. So. It would that I can't recommend enough. But the trap is that if you get stuck in that and then don't think that just because you're settling for something you're stuck forever. Because this is the thing. I didn't want to take. I had other opportunities. I didn't want to take opportunities that weren't in my target area because I felt that I would be going backwards or get stuck. And it feels like that, especially in a time when like the uncertainty level is really high. Like we have no idea what's going to happen next. But actually, fact is, if you learn about yourself through these times and stuff, you will find what it is you want to do next. You'll meet a ton of cool people in all of these places, and it will you'll find pathways out of whatever hole you got stuck in for that time. So I just want to say that even if you feel like you're taking something that is a settling or a step back, it may just be a quick break so you can find another way forward and do that. So don't get stuck there.
No, I totally agree. I think there's a very big difference too between settling on a job that's like a B- type job than there is taking like an F job. So like very much understand you need to pay bills, but also there's in any challenge, there's opportunities. So for instance, I have a few friends that when, COVID first came out earlier this year, they were like, all right, what are the opportunities here that we can start a business to make a change and to help out? So, being aware of where you are on the risk scale too, in terms of, are you 100% needing financial stability, or do you have some side projects that you can then maybe start a business or take a job that's, not going to be a sure thing for the next 3 years, or just knowing yourself well and knowing how true you need to stay to either a certain skill set you want to use or a certain industry you want to be in. I think some of the panelists here have been tied to certain industries, and some of them have been more tied to certain skill sets, and just knowing that about yourself, I think, is really helpful.
Something that somebody said to me to help me jump out of my corporate job and start my own company was that it will never get easier. Yeah, I think you're always looking for a time when like, oh, well, this time's bad. So, you know, that I'll wait for the next window. You know, I was thinking about starting my own business, then I had a kid, then I moved countries, and it's like, hey, wait, no, they're right. It will never get easier. You know,
I think the barriers to entry only kind of continue to add on to themselves for sure. And you'll either be too young or too old. Like no one ever feels like they're the right age for anything.
I was gonna say, I totally agree with that. Like I still don't know. I don't even know what a dream job is. Like, I think that sounds great in theory. And look, I have one I could tell you, right? But like humans change and life changes, and that's kind of the beauty of things. And I don't mean to romanticize it, but like kind of whatever you think your dream job is now probably will change, probably will evolve. So it's not like it's all or nothing. It's not binary. I think, you know, find a next best thing and go from there. And like, I feel like if I were the students listening, I would be like, you know, frustrated, like with the, like, it'll work out, you'll find your way out. And that sounds, you know, I guess idealistic, but I think we've seen in our lives, like not only did that happen once, like even after business school, like 3 years ago, my company, it was owned by Omnicom, this like big media conglomerate that presumably you have a very safe job. They just closed the New York office of my job. And this time I'm like, wait, I didn't graduate business school in a recession too. And so it's like, right, well, this just keeps happening. It's never gonna stop. Like life is just, it comes at you, and either you change or the world changes or the company changes or macroeconomics and geopolitical, you know, winds shift. And I think it's always going to happen. So don't think, oh, now it's all over, right? This is just a skill that you're learning quicker than everyone else. And I absolutely believe it will benefit all of you. And I can certainly speak for myself that it's benefited me to have gone through it sooner than later. And it sounds like Chris for you too. So even though that might be not super comforting right now, I promise you it's going to make you like a better, stronger human who knows how to persevere through shifts and changes.
Hi, I don't know how I'm supposed to upstage that, Erica. I don't know what to say. I just wanted to come in and quickly introduce myself. My name is Tatiana LaFleur. I'm the Assistant Director for Student and Alumni Programs. I'm not really a panelist. I didn't intend to speak today, but I see your Q&A. I'm gonna say something. I'm actually not an NYU alum yet, LOL, but I will become one in the future. But I graduated from Brooklyn College in 2015 with my bachelor's, and I also graduated from Brooklyn College in 2018 with my master's. And even then, even though it wasn't a recession and the economy was supposedly booming, I had to be flexible. Let me tell you, when I graduated with my bachelor's from Brooklyn College, my 4-year degree, I was working at DSW across the street from where I currently work now. And it was just something that I had to do. And granted, I knew I wanted to go into higher education, but I just didn't have the opportunity then. But I did learn a lot of transferable skills. Every job has transferable skills nowadays, okay? Every single job. So I learned transferable skills. I learned how to network. I actually was talking to people about what I wanted to do, and they connected me with other people in higher education. That's how I started building my network in higher ed. So even though it might not seem like your quote unquote dream job, Erica's right, people change, you should still use it as a stepping stone to learn whatever you can, put it in your bag of tricks, and take it along with you when you actually get to the job that you want, okay? I'll hop in here and there. I'm not really a panelist, but I'll pop in there if I have a little something to say to you all.
You'd be such a good career coach. That transferable skills thing is like what I say to most clients. Nice job.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
and that's also something in my role at Foundation for Jewish Camp is talking about, and I could not have said it better, talk with the bag of tricks. I hope that's okay that I steal that from you. But that oftentimes people refer to being a camp counselor, which is a seasonal summer job, as I can't go back to camp because I need to go get a real job. And those jobs and experiences that many of you have probably had, whether that's an NYU work-study job, or as a babysitter, or as a camp counselor, or helping your grandma figure out how to use Zoom for her 90th birthday. Like, those are things and skills that you're flexing and that you can take with you for sure. I also wanted to share, it sounds like people were saying, like, definitely take what you can. And I wanted to share, for me, I was privileged, totally privileged enough to not have to take the first and only thing that was offered to me. When I graduated, I was offered a full-time job working at a Jewish institution, at a synagogue. But I really felt passionately that if I didn't try to get into the broadcast journalism world right after graduation, and I didn't try to keep going for it, that I never would. And so I didn't take that first couple of jobs in the Jewish nonprofit world, but it took me until November after graduation, so several months, where I didn't have a full-time income. At the time, and I know the laws around healthcare have changed, I was able for a little while to stay on my parents' healthcare, but I was nannying, I was working part-time with teenagers, and then I interned unpaid at Shalom TV doing editing 2 days a week, which was miserable. I learned that I loved TV production but hated editing, but I was able to then explain for like this gap on my resume, but I had to do those internship unpaid pieces in between the nannying and that piece, which was not as fun. But so just the balance of holding out realistically, if that's a possibility.
For sure. All right, I know we have a lot of good answers here, so I'm gonna combine the last two questions into one, and just ask you all in terms of, you know, from your alumni wise old status here to all these almost alumni on the call, what advice do you have for the class of 2020, or anyone who's seeking employment right now, and what would you have, you know, done differently when you were graduating?
I'll start again. I'm sure this is true for all fields, but I think online presence now especially is so important. Making sure that what you do and who you are is on the internet for people to find and see, because you never know where those jobs are going to come from, who's going to see it. And I think as much as you can put your work and yourself out there, the better. I also think as much as you kind of talked about this a little bit, Alexa, of just using what you do best to adapt to a situation. So like me as an artist right now, what can I offer in this time of 2020 where like, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty. Maybe it's not a lot, but like I could create my own content. I could be, you know, working on that. And that could be how I kind of fulfill that side of myself while I'm looking for something that maybe isn't quite as fulfilling job-wise. So I think there are always ways to take your skill set and apply it to what's happening now and make sure that you're keeping it kind of percolating while, you know, you're trying to make things work.
Erica, Chris, or Jill?
I can
Any
go.
hot tips? Okay, you all unmuted at the same time. That was great.
I would say this is one thing that I think I did that I wish I didn't, but at the time it's like, you know, you see some people getting jobs or their positions that they were promised stay intact and yours doesn't. And I think one of the things that kind of, I saw a question in there about like managing like emotional stability. And I think one of the things I did a lot of that if I look back, I wish I wouldn't have done is kind of manage my own expectations. And I think I did a lot of, especially having come from Stern where a lot of the kids were making a lot of money and and a lot of them actually lost their jobs when the banks collapsed. But I did a lot of comparing myself to others, and I felt like the world's against me and I'm a failure because I work in fashion. I was making like $30,000 maybe, I don't know, like nothing compared to my peers. And I think I was so much focused on what I didn't have that I wasn't focused on like kind of soaking up all I could with what I did have. Like I did have a job. It wasn't my dream job. I didn't get paid very much, but I wish I would have worked harder and focused on learning all I could in that moment versus constantly comparing myself to others and being angry. And I know that's really hard to say because it's super natural to feel angry, but I don't think I took enough advantage of what I did have. And like, you're all going to graduate with degrees from NYU, and that's a pretty big thing. And I think no one's ever going to take that away from you. And so to focus on what you can do with that and the opportunities you do have and the network that you have and the alumni you have, like, don't get too angry that you're not leveraging that. Because like I said, I do think in the long term, this will make you like stronger, better employees. I mean, I'm a person, and Chris, who like owns my own business. So I'm hiring people, and I look for people who know how to persevere and know how to find solutions. And all the skills that you're going to learn from this are literally exactly what I am hiring for, especially when you're coming out of college. No one expects you to be an expert at like modeling, or meaning like financial modeling, or whatever. Like they look for
regular modeling.
regular modeling. They look
Or
for
anything.
For tenacity, right? And like attitude. And so if you can keep that up and you can learn how to even be better at that from this, if you can do that in this time, you can do that in any time. And I think focus on that is what I wish I would have done more of, if that's a helpful piece of advice.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I mean, I would say like I said, got my master's at NYU, and the first 2 or 3 jobs I had right after I graduated, I didn't necessarily, quote unquote, need to have the master's. And so I was getting really frustrated and bitter that I had like wasted those 2 years of my life, which is clearly not true. And it was a lovely experience. But then, I ended up reaching out to a couple universities, and now I'm an adjunct professor in the business school. And I couldn't have done that without having a master's. Like, that was very much required. Needless to say too, having an NYU degree on your resume is very helpful when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to find investors or clients. And just generally, there's really no downside. So you guys are all like heads and shoulders above a lot of your peers. I would quickly say, as a career coach, my one pet peeve that people often get stuck on is titles. I think titles mean basically nothing in today's day and age. It's like ninja warrior, marketer, or whatever. So just think about more the skills you have rather than the title. And then also know that there are a lot of companies hiring right now. Clearly, we're in a very unique, very sad moment, but it is not like everything is shut down. A lot of jobs are still hiring. A lot of industries are actually hiring more than they were. It's just kind of shifted. And also, like, on the positive side, most work is remote, which some people really enjoy. So you can wear your pajama bottoms every day, and like, you don't know, I might have them on right now. So trying to, take your fear and sadness and know it's okay to be grieving, but hopefully concurrently also be, working through the process of finding a job and doing interviews and networking.
I wanted to second what you and Erica said about just like and the way it was put to me. Actually, I learned in March this year, not back when I graduated, which was I was pretty pissed off about all that was going on. We just launched product. We had just started out. We were we were going somewhere, started to grow, and then this all happened. I had kids at home, everything, we're all working remotely. Suddenly my daycare school situation evaporated. Like, it felt like I was really facing some huge headwinds. And somebody said to me, Chris, you just have to learn how to inhabit this time and this moment, because there isn't another one. You just gotta, this is, rather than resist this time and hope it goes away, what can you do now to live in this moment? And it can be aware of your own frustration and anger, and aware of your own disappointment, and especially comparing yourselves to other people where you see like it's not affecting them as much, or they're something good is happening to them, and you start to think about it for yourself. And I think I wish I had learned that lesson when I had graduated, so I didn't have for a summer and then a year of sort of just feeling like a victim or resentful of that time.
I think that's really good life advice, honestly. Like,
I mean, I didn't learn it from graduating.
Trying to embrace it. Yeah, I mean, I think that's good life advice for basically everyone that's living in the current global moment. So Um,
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other wise words they want to speak on before?
The
Jill, you look like you do.
something that I only realized in realizing so much differences between my husband and I is that he works to live and I live to work. Like for me, it was really important to find a career or multiple careers now, that it was something that I really wanted to go to every day, whether that was because it was always the work that was good or the people that was good that I know someone had a question about, and that has certainly shifted. And so important, I think, especially during job searching, that I wish that I had done more, is finding things outside of that part of life that bring you joy and happiness. And I know people say work-life balance, which isn't, if you don't have work, applying for a job is work. But so finding that, whether it's a support group or friends or getting fresh air.
I saw a question come in just a second ago on here. Do you mind if I speak to it? How do you adjust yourselves to adapt to big career changes? I failed to get a job in the career I wanted early, and we talked about that. But then halfway through my actual second career that I was in, I failed again miserably. And the business I was running in Asia was not doing well, and I was going to be basically, it was basically out. And I started reading a lot. This is not everyone's thing, but I like books like Getting Things Done and Never Eat Alone and stuff like that changed my life. And I wish I had discovered them. They've all been around for decades. I wish I had discovered them when I was in college or before that, or, so if you're into, if I guess self-help is not a great term, but if you're can get into that kind of thing, I would highly recommend looking at some of that stuff, because those strategies help a lot of people through a lot of difficult stuff.
Okay, awesome. So now I'll try to move on to the question and answer session. There's lots of questions, so try to group them. If any of you panelists saw any questions that you particularly want to answer, just go ahead and just answer them. The first question and also whoever feels comfortable answering can answer. It doesn't have to be all of you, but the first question that was posed by an attendee was, what were your priorities during your job search? Did you prioritize skills, salary, decided to go on more education? If you could talk on that.
I think it's an equal balance for me between skills and salary. You have to be able to live, right? That's the one thing that we all have to make sure that we're taking care of our basic needs. But for me, if I could find that basic need involving some umbrella version of like what I was interested in, then that was the goal. But this was in some of the other questions posted, that like sometimes the people that I worked with were what made the job for me. I was teaching in Canarsie, Brooklyn, in a charter school system that was unbearable. I hated it. I loved my students. They were wonderful. And I loved my coworkers, but like the job was soul killing. But those coworkers were what made me go to work every day. And the important connections that I made with people that I still network within education. And I would do anything for those people. So, I think that's a hard question to answer, because it's going to change and it's going to depend on your situation in the moment. But I think for me, it was equal parts salary and skills.
I would add, for me, it was also the opportunity for growth. When I was working before I started working at New York One, in the interview, they told me about how by starting as a master control part-time audio camera operator, that I could eventually, many of the current technical directors at the time had started in my position. And that being a technical director was my dream job. So hearing that, that pathway was really, really big for me.
If it's at all helpful, I kind of have I took a very tactical route. Maybe that's like the stern in me, but I kind of said, like, here are the things I want, and I'm going to give myself until, I don't remember what the date was, but it was like until September to find a job. And if I don't find a job that's reasonable by then, I'm going to apply to Bloomingdale's. And I didn't find a job, and I applied to like working like on the shoe floor, I think. I don't even know if they would let me serve customers at that point. I think it was in the back. But I thought, okay, I'm going to either take a job or I'm going to buy myself time. My family's not from here. I didn't have, like money saved up or anything. So I had to start making money. So I thought, Erica, like what is better for you, to take a job? I mean, kind of Tati, similar to what you were doing, take a job to buy yourself time so you can optimize more on the priorities that you want? Or are you like, all right, let's get started. This is good enough. And I was always kind of weighing that, but I put a date in where I was like, I'm just going to go get a job in the city. Like, presumably I'm a college graduate. I can do this job really well. And I got the job at Bloomingdale's. Luckily, before my start date, I got my career position thing. So I never ended up going, but that always helped me focus on the priorities that I had the backstop of, I know what I'm going to do, because that's just the decision I'm going to make. So it kept me from maybe spiraling or going in circles a little bit, if that's helpful for anyone.
Great, awesome. And then another good question was, could you guys speak on any books or resources or things that you're doing or did that kept yourself motivated and emotionally strong to get through these times?
I didn't do this then, and through those times, emotional situation was turbulent, nearly canceled my wedding. But now somewhere along the way I picked up meditation. I know that's also not for everyone, but it has done a lot for me. And the one thing I describe it is it's made me much more aware of my own feelings, which has helped me also then process them. So, you're not always going to like what you see when you pay more attention to something like that, but it does, it's something I'd recommend.
Yeah, I kind of second Chris's. I wouldn't say for me necessarily meditation. I would say more exercise with a side helping of meditation. So I've really liked yoga or like outdoor activities and exercise, just as both a stress relief and like kind of calmer downer, if that's a word. And then I've always really liked reading. So a lot of people, especially these days, love podcasts. I actually have a podcast, which is ironic, but I never listen to them. I love reading books. So having any sort of resources, and whether, I'm in the mood for something that is like a business book, like I love Company of One, for instance, if you're wanting to do like a lean startup, or just a really trashy sci-fi novel sometimes if I just need a minute. So just depends.
Okay, great. And the next question is, what is the difference between 2008 and 2020 in your opinion?
I have a lot to say on that, so you can either step back a second, or we can, whatever you want to do. All right, we're going for it. 2008 was a debt crisis, right? Very drastically different than now, where the causes, but the effect sort of becomes the same. Where in 2008, something we didn't know was happening had started about a year and a half ago, which was mortgages started to go bad. And then it rippled its way all the way through the economy and had a ton of unexpected impacts further down the chain. In 2020, it's not a debt crisis. There is a lot of debt, and there's the financial picture and everything else is very, very different though than it was then. And so whenever I hear people worried about a depression or something else that's going on right now, I counsel that the primary difference here is that the reason the economy stopped is because we had to stop it to save lives, which is a very different situation than it stopping all of a sudden by itself. That said, the reverberations will be the same. And that's probably the situation that is the most worrying, is that even as we get back to work, all that sort of thing, many of the spending is what drives the economy. What you're spending is somebody else's income. And a lot of the spending has stopped because people can't afford it as much. Businesses aren't spending as much, people aren't spending as much. And so a lot of the jobs that have been made from that spending have also gone, and a lot of the work. So I think there will be a rebuilding period. And it will be very much dependent on situation of the dance we run of the virus flaring up and having to stop the economy and all that sort of thing again and again. People are hurt pretty bad on their personal balance sheets, and repairing that's going to take some time. So I think the cause of the crisis was very different, but the effect is very much the same. I think someone said, and I apologize, I can't remember who it was on the panel, but like now is a good time to look for opportunities. There's a lot of things changing. A lot of jobs are shifting from one place to another, spend, interests, people are suddenly learning what they can and can't do without, which I think is another crazy thing. Like remote work is going to explode, that kind of stuff. So those are the changes that I think if you take a step back and take a deep breath, you can see some of that happening, and it's the people who do it first are the best positioned for what's coming next, and it will grow again. So
I would add on, I mean, I'm thinking about this a lot for my own business. So we do brand consulting, and we do it for everyone from Netflix to L'Oreal to Nike to whatever, and each of those verticals has been impacted so differently. And Chris, I think a lot about like consumer confidence, and people might not be buying makeup, but they're certainly streaming Netflix a lot. And I think that's a big difference, is that, obviously the internet existed in 2008, but media and the internet and just general like connectedness is so much bigger now, and there's so much more possibility that I wish kind of existed in our time. I think we were still kind of in a more IRL world. And so I don't quite know like what the implication of that is, but it's definitely a place to look for. And I think there's so much like movement and interesting stuff happening, and the cultural reverberations of this will certainly impact that in such a huge way that I would love if I were like young and being like, what should I do right now? I mean, from my business and from a employee perspective, that would be a really interesting place to jump into right now.
Okay, I think I'll ask one more question. There's been a number of questions about like networking and how do you approach networking? Is there a particular way that you guys go about it? And also particularly in this socially distanced time, how do you remain respectful of that while still trying to network? So yeah.
I'd love to jump in and just recognize, I think at least one of the questions was asking how to actually give back to some of the people that you network with. And I think that is just spot on. Often when I first was trying to do coffee dates and networking, it was very much around, it felt very transactional, which never felt right to me. And so finding that way of like, there's a difference between trying to get a job interview and trying to get information. And so trying to actually get information, and as Chris mentioned before, also building relationships with people, whether it comes out of an OkCupid date or a customer at DSW, like, but that has to be authentic. Like you have to go in actually believing that you want to create a relationship with somebody, and not copy and pasting thank you notes, but actually personalizing them. You probably know to send thank you notes, but I've handwritten. Is that what you're saying, Chris? Yeah, that's old school, but it's great. I still have thank you notes from interns of mine from years ago. And really listening to the things that they're saying and the things that they're interested in. So that's something that I had an informational conversation with somebody today, and they sparked that they said, oh, I learned about this from a YouTube video. And so I have the YouTube video open to watch after this panel. And so when I write my follow-up email, I'm hoping that I'll find something to actually type back to something that they shared.
And I think for me, I'm in the job world all day, every day. And so part of what I love about connecting clients to other clients for informational interviews is that it's kind of a cycle, like they're giving back. So knowing that, you're asking for information right now, in however many years or months, people are going to come to you and ask information. So just kind of knowing that even if you don't feel like it's necessarily reciprocal at this moment, it eventually will be. And, you're also making the person that you're talking to feel knowledgeable and useful as well. So it is that you are giving back, you just may not even know it.
Second to that, I second that because the other thing you can give somebody who you're meeting is just some sincere appreciation. People really, when someone comes to them asking for help, usually a first instinct is to try to do something. And often you tell them there's nothing, they know you're young, you're out of college. They're probably, they know that you're coming to ask for their advice and their help. A lot of people love giving it. The handwritten thank you is great, but also just saying, I really, really appreciate you doing this. And I think what you have is valuable is probably enough for a lot of people. It works better than you think, because that's just how people are.
I just have one thing to add. I have a little different take on networking. Yes, we should network with like other people who might be in positions that we want to be in. But I think oftentimes like we as students, because I was a student not too long ago, we forget our peers. So like your friend gets a job and you're like, oh my gosh, how did they get that job? They're your friend. So don't be afraid to ask them. They can easily and more readily be willing to connect you with someone that they know that can give you an in on that job. So yes, networking with higher ups from companies that you want to work with is fine, but also keep track of what your friends are doing, because at the end of the day, all of you are going through this together, okay? And all of you will rise together, and eventually a friend of yours might have something that you're interested in. So keep in contact, continue to network with your friends, even after NYU. And if you don't understand that now, I promise you, the lesson will come back around tenfold, because when I was in college, I was like, networking, okay, I have my friends, great. But now as an adult, I see how important it is to stay connected with my peers.
I think going off of what Tatiana just said so brilliantly is like, a lot of people think of networking as this like daunting job that I have to like go out and do. How can I ever like go meet these people that I, want to be working with? But I think as long as you are authentically yourself, you are passionate about what you do, and when you talk about it, that's going to rub off on other people, and they're going to see that. And everyone in this world, I mean, the connections are so small. I'm in Ohio and I meet people that like happen to know somebody that like I lived in New York with 14 years ago. So you never know who they know, what they can do for you. I mean, Jill's example earlier was wonderful, with New York One. You never know who you're going to meet that can help you in your journey. So networking doesn't necessarily have to be a task. It can also just be like you living your daily life and like sharing yourself with people and them kind of helping you out. So I think that makes it, at least for me, feel less daunting.
And I feel like we didn't touch on at all that, if an employee refers you and then they get a bonus, that's a whole other world. So if they're getting a financial bonus for you getting a job, like, again, everyone is winning.
I think one thing I'd add on to that, I forget the original question, but it feels roughly in line with what we're talking about, is I feel like I can help a lot more, and I feel like people are valuing my time more if you come with specific questions. Where I get frustrated is when people ask for time and I'm totally willing to help, but then they say, well, I'm kind of lost. I don't know what to do. It's like, I can't help you look inside. Like, I'm not a therapist, but if you ask me questions of the industry or marketing, or what does this role look like, or what's your POV on being a brand manager versus this or that, like those things I can help you with. So I think some of that, and then I feel a greater connection with that person. And I see some of the questions are about like following up or recontacting, like that's totally buildable, right? Over time, someone comes back and they're like, hey, I actually ended up going in this direction, but I'm faced with the same thing. I think just the more specific you can be, it feels just like a better use of everyone's time. You get more out of it, I get more out of it, we have a better connection. And if you approach it as gathering specific information versus like, I'm just gonna reach out to this person and hope they give me a job or know of a job, chances are I don't. Like, I don't spend my time looking for jobs. So I'd say like gather information and ask specific questions makes everything more useful and relationships better. I don't know if you guys disagree, but I've found that for myself.
I 1,000,000% agree.
Totally agree. Also, to make it seem less daunting, since you're looking for jobs that interest you with people you like and all that and other good stuff, you don't have to waste your time networking with people you find boring or aren't interested in. I did so much of that and wish I had every minute of it back. You can spend your time getting to know people who are cool that you like, and it turns out most people will eventually need something or have a question for you, or you'll have a question for them, and all this sorts of other stuff down the track. Networking, getting to know people you actually like, doing things you actually like, is probably going to lead you more towards something you actually like than going to a lot of mix.
And just to echo, I think, Tati, you were saying this a little bit before, but the networking doesn't only have to be with the person who has the job that you eventually want 10 years from now. Like, how amazing to find other recent college graduate, even if you don't know them yet, and be like, learn about them and their journey, even as a peer, even if they didn't go to NYU. I think one of the scariest things is cold contacting. And also one of the things that has brought me the most connections, aside from NYU.
I agree with everybody saying that pay attention to your peers and spend more time with them. I wish I had. This may be like a startup world thing, but most companies are started with groups of friends, people who know each other really well, and like it's the number of people looking for like a technical co-founder or looking for some sort of like early startup stage company jobs, but like trying to do that in a formal. I mean, Alexa, you may know better than me, but it always ends up being people you know. And so having that diversity of people and staying in touch with them and being interested in what's going on in their lives is always a good way to keep those sort of things alive.
Okay, thank you all so much for all those answers. So many great questions are dropped in the chat. I'm sorry we couldn't get through all of them. Now we're going to be hearing from Alexa some tips to help us navigate through the job market.
Hello. Okay. I believe that Tatiana is oh, look at you on top of it. So I wanted to just start with a caveat and say that I'm going to give some tips today that are supposed to be useful for the majority of you, but know that usually I work one-on-one with clients and prefer to give individualized advice and actionable direction. So hopefully this is helpful, but I'm also, here, and I'll have my email at the end if you ever need to reach out and have questions. So I'm speed talk at you. Know that there are going to be notes that get sent out to all attendees, like a one-pager of notes. So don't feel like you have to take, crazy notes as I'm talking here. But in terms of how I would say to start out, I would say the best thing you can do is start with trying to figure out your strengths and skills overlap. So kind of figuring out in this Venn diagram where the overlap of what you're good at and what you like is. And once you then talk through those skills, whether it's like communication or writing or people management or operations or, whatever it is, you're good at drawing and you love it. I mean, honestly, anything at all, kind of take that, and that's going to be the output of the job search keywords, which can also be synonymous with skill. Sometimes a keyword can be an industry or a mission, like for instance, nonprofit or like financial tech or something. But for the most part, they're going to be skills keywords. Another way you can think about this exercise is if you're, kind of in that flow state and time is passing you by in a good way, what types of skills or tasks are you doing? That also is a good answer for figuring out these job search keywords. All right, moving along. So some other ideas and homework that I give to clients are just like self-reflection. Everybody loves personality quizzes. So I give 3 free quizzes. One is based upon the Enneagram, which tells you what you're motivated by. One is based upon Myers-Briggs. It's 16personalities.com, free version. And then one is based on the Clifton Strengths Finder, and there's a free version called High 5, and it tells you your top strengths. Another thing that I really like hearing from clients is their just long-term goals. So 2, 5, 10 years, where do you want to be? What do you want to have accomplished? If you are trying to go into politics, or you're wanting to be financially retired and living in Bali, or you would like to be a woodworker in Colorado or whatever, like they're very different lifestyles. And so figuring out what a long-term goal is useful for you to then work towards it. And then I think we kind of touched on this actually in the talk, but criteria is so important and so useful. So figuring out for this next job, what's most important for you? Is it salary? Is it location? Is it industry? Is it literally the types of clothes you're going to wear post-COVID when people are not all working remotely? I, for instance, do not want to wear a suit every day. That has been on my job criteria list every time. And just knowing that that can change throughout your career is totally normal. I would say you also want to take into account some logistical needs. So first of all, salary. 3 questions to think about are how much do you need to pay your bills in a certain city? Secondarily, how much do you need to feel emotionally valued? Pick the higher number of the 2 so they're both fulfilled. And then thirdly, thinking on for an A-, B+ type role, what salary would you be excited to take? And that should match the same answer of your first 2 questions together. And then also knowing in terms of where you're going to be, like geographically, for instance, New York is a very different cost of living than Ohio, for instance. So how much you're spending and the salary, just being aware of the cost of living adjustments and using a calculator if you're looking at multiple locations is really important, because a lot of job searching historically and probably will again be geography based. So also then thinking through where do you want to live and work, create a list, look at a map, figure out what's important. For instance, on mine, it's usually like good weather, low cost of living, near a body of water, university town, and then look at a map and really narrow it down to like top 3 metro areas, and then figure out based upon your salary, what the salary need for each of those cities is going to be. Because again, it'll be different for different locations. Okay. Moving right along here. Let me just throw out too, I like NerdWallet as a cost of living calculator for the US, but there's a whole bunch of ones out there. In terms of some job search engines, so here's a few, and like I said, this will be on the notes page. There's a million out there. These are kind of my top favorites. Full disclosure, used to work at Indeed, but I think they're the best aggregator. They're really the only one that has good salary information. So I would recommend you put a salary minimum in, and then you use Indeed in terms of their searchability. They have all of the jobs from everywhere else on there. However, since you are all lovely NYU students or almost alumni, using the job board there is a great resource as well. I would recommend if you are, for instance, using Indeed like I used for our further upcoming slides and examples, I would use the salary filter, like I said, and then I would not search by title. I mentioned that earlier, but I think the best thing you can do, if you could go to the next slide, is to search by keyword. So for instance, minimum $74,000, strategy, communication. Those are the 2 skills keywords you're looking for that you want to use. You are looking in 78704, which is where I live in Austin. And then you go in and you just click find jobs. Then the next thing you're going to do is be aware of a couple filters. If you want to use a distance filter, you can 10, 15, 25 miles, go for it. I would recommend if you're looking for full-time, you're going to need to click full-time for every new search you do. Annoyingly, you just have to click it every time. And then the one thing that is optional, the experience level filter, I don't particularly love unless you're using it for entry level. So if you're graduating right now and you're coming out of an undergrad degree, maybe click entry level, see what's out there, and then unclick it and see, if you like the difference just upon your particular industry. It'll take away a lot of like the high level executive jobs that you may not want to be seeing or you don't need to see. In terms of how to read a job posting, it's important and can save a lot of time and emotional, like unnecessary stress. I would recommend that you start at the very bottom and then work upwards. So most jobs, the requirements section is going to be at the very bottom. So I would say, make sure that you are trying to meet the majority of those bullet points, but you don't need to meet 100%. My rule is 80%. So 80% or more of those requirements at the bottom, and then move up from there. So the middle section is most often going to be responsibilities. And this is, do you like it? Do you love it? Do you want to do it? That's kind of the next thing on the section. The last thing is at the top going to be the company and the actual title. So you can then save it for later. If you're reading the responsibility section and you're like getting an ulcer, clearly it's not a good fit, just click away. There's a lot of jobs out there. I would say, again, just make sure your criteria that you've made before is matching. And then I really like, totally free, I don't get a commission or anything, hunter.co. They're a great board. It's very visual. You can keep track of your jobs and like move them over when you're applying and interviewing. And then you don't have to, I mean, you can use an Excel or something, but this is very easy and free and visually engaging. In terms of expectation setting, I would say, honestly, to start applying as soon as you can. There's a lot of people that are unemployed and on furlough. The faster you can start applying and sending out applications and doing interviews, the better. And it will only help you. I would recommend doing at least 10, 12, maybe even 15 applications a week, if that's something you can do. I know that we're running out of time, so I think I'm going to really quickly just say, informational interviews we talked about. I think that talking to someone with a similar personality to you that loves their job is really helpful, or someone that works in an industry or a company you're interested in, or someone that has a type of role. Because of all these lovely reasons, you increase your network, you practice interviewing, you can use LinkedIn, you can use your connections, just ask them specific questions like, what do they do they like it, how'd they get there, etc. Next slide, really fast. I wanted to include examples, but I know we don't have time. So resume, numbers-based, make sure that you have as many numbers that you can throw in there as possible. Make sure it's consistent. You're gonna get 15 answers if you ask 15 people what to do in a resume. So I would say just, ask a few people for their opinions and then move along and just start using it. Have, a couple sections. You can have your education section at the top if you've recently graduated. And then after you have the next job or two, move it to the bottom. Have the dates on the right side, have bullets as your content. I wouldn't necessarily recommend having a summary section unless you're getting further along in your career, and a skills section you don't have to have either unless it's technical skills. Be consistent. If you have bullet point, or if you have periods, use it throughout or not. Make sure your verb tense is correct if it's past tense or current. And then I would say when you're using those keywords to search for jobs and you're seeing all these jobs pop up, make sure those same keywords are in your application. So the resume is actually going to be the last thing you do because you're wanting to make sure that those skills keywords are in there. Your LinkedIn can be a lovely copy paste of your resume content. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I think lastly, cover letter. So I would say your cover letter is, I would recommend always applying with one, even if it's not required. Basically, I send clients a whole list of questions to help them think about how to write it. Answer the why do you want this company? Why is this role speaking to you as your first intro sentence? Make it interesting, full of adjectives, passion, curiosity. Have it kind of trickle down. So start interesting and then it can trickle into the other information. And I would recommend having a 90% of the way done template that then you can use to plug and play for future iterations where only maybe 10% you have to change as you go. Ooh, okay, think I did it. I know I'm a little over. If you need more free resources, feel free to go to my website. There's a bunch of books and blogs and podcasts and stuff. Also, if you are feeling really stuck and don't know what you want to do with your life or need interview prep or anything, I'm also here if you want to hire me to meet one-on-one. Whew, okay, all right. I hope you all have a lovely evening, and I'm going to turn it back over to either Tatiana or Amina.
Okay, awesome. That was great. So I think that that's unfortunately all that we have time for today. This has been such a great event. Thank you, Alexa, for being here and for all the advice you've given us as we navigate this job market. Also, thank you to each and every one of you panelists. You've all provided really helpful advice and like a very unique perspective, and we appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this evening. Also, thanks to everybody out there that tuned in. I hope you found this panel to be beneficial. Also, we'll be sending out a survey and an email, so please look out for that and fill it out when you have a chance, and just look out for any other alumni emails with events. Also, a big congratulations to all of our graduating seniors in the class of 2020. I'm really confident that NYU's prepared us for a wonderful future, and I think it's exciting that we now get to be part of this NYU network of alumni as we move forward. But I hope that all of you out there and your families are staying safe and healthy in these unprecedented times. And once again, just congratulations to everybody in our graduating seniors. Yay.
Thank you so much on behalf of Alumni Relations. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you to the moderator. Thank you, Student Alumni Council, for collaborating and hosting this. And thank you to all of you out there who attended, graduating students or not, if you're just looking for a job. Really appreciate you coming out and hearing what the panelists have to say. We hope you found this very beneficial. And we will be sending out an email tomorrow If not tomorrow, then you all receive it on Monday. It will include a recording of this event as well as the one pager that Alexa mentioned earlier. And it'll include some tidbits about a very special event that we're working on for the class of 2020, NYU Toast in Trivia. So yes, stay tuned. We'll follow up with you, and you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much. Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks again.
Congrats.
Good luck and congrats, everybody. Do you mind?